The Packers defeat the Colts to get their first victory of the 2024 season. The Tennessee Titans head coach is not very happy with his young quarterback's decision making. The Packers find themselves with a third-round draft pick on the injured reserve. Guys, grab yourself a drink. It is time to pour ourselves another Packers podcast. Before we get into the episode and the breakdown, quick little update for anyone who's just casually viewing. We kind of do this every other week as far as hit that subscribe button, but I have incentive for everyone. Christian and I have some goals to grow this channel. We've had a little bit of success over TikTok, so maybe you stumbled over here from the TikTok channel or the feed that is. We're putting some prizes out there, so some giveaways, if you will. The first is really easy. At 1,000 subscribers, we're only like 150 subscribers away. We're giving away a canvas. We can either do one of these giant ones behind me, or we can do a smaller one that you can bring to work and set out for all your coworkers to see. So they'll hopefully ask what that is and also subscribe to the channel. At 2,500 subscribers, jersey giveaway, player of your choice. So pretty easy stuff right there. I would. Wow. Who would you take? What would your player be?
Man, we had this conversation last week. I don't even know, man. I mean, after this week's game, probably one of the offensive linemen, honestly.
Probably Malik Willis. All right. And we're going to get into that here in a second.
That number 2.
And then at 5,000 subscribers, if we can hit 5,000 subscribers by the end of the season, I am going to double down. I'm not sure you're completely in with me on this one yet, but I'm going to give away some Packers tickets. So if we can hit 5,000 subscribers by the end of the season, which by my math says somewhere early February, because we're going to go to the Super Bowl. I'm not giving up on that. Not close to giving up on that. We'll give away some tickets for next season. And yes, this is all legit. All you got to do is hit that subscribe button, like the video, hit that bell so you can get notifications. I think we're finally starting to find our groove here. And as we talk about the groove, let's talk about a Packers 16-10 decisive victory in a sense of the term. I was pretty close on my score prediction. I said 13-10.
It was very close.
I know. Yeah. I'm kind of happy I came up with that one. They moved to 1-on-1 on the season, and it was an absolutely masterful game plan by Sir Matt LaFleur. Just initial reactions. You came out dancing. You had the music playing, sunglasses rocking. What are you?
It's a Packers win.
Yeah.
Don't matter how they do it. A win's a win.
Well, they did it with like force. Like they absolutely controlled that game for, like I had mentioned, for a solid 3.5 quarters. Almost a possibility to put that game away very early on in the game. So do we want to just get into the good, bad, and ugly side of it? And I'm a little bit hesitant on the ugly because I don't have a whole lot to say. Like I think as we'll dive through what our thoughts were and takeaways from the Colts game, it's mostly good across the board. So actually, I'm going to have you start. What was your good coming out of week 2? What was your highlights, what you love to see, outside of a Packers victory?
I mean, from the get-go, from the first drive, the game plan was exactly what we talked about. It was run the ball. It was keep the pressure off of Malik Willis, get the ground game going. So we saw that right from the beginning, and Josh Jacobs looked great. I think he had 128 yards in the first half rushing, which is, there's a lot of running backs in the league that don't have that many yards in an entire game. So to have 128 yards in the first half is stellar. And that's what allowed the Packers to control the game so well. So Josh Jacobs, and specifically the offensive line, being that upfront push to get that run game going, they were my good for this week.
Yeah, you had mentioned it. Was it 128 yards rushing in the first half? It is the most since Amon Green had 133 yards back in 2001. So we have not seen a first half rushing performance like that for 24 years. It's 23 years. That was quite a while ago. I mean, to your point, they absolutely controlled not only time of possession, but they came out ready to just throat punch the Indianapolis Colts right off the start of the game. First drive was 6 plays, 42 yards, and in a field goal. Second drive, 11 plays, 82 yards, and in a touchdown. Malik Willis' first NFL touchdown, has more passing touchdowns than Caleb Williams. We'll get to that in overtime. And then the third drive was a wonderful 10-play drive, 68 yards that frustratingly did not end in a touchdown, ended in a fumble. But the Packers just controlled the game on both sides of the ball. You bring up the running. I mean, it's easy to look at the Packers' offensive rushing as being the headline in this entire game. They put together long drives. They had some defensive takeaways. I would say, for the most part, mine is a little bit of just overall time of possession. It's hard for the Indianapolis Colts to get into a flow when they are constantly backpedaling and not being able to get the Packers off the field. But I'm going to do just an under the radar good, and that is our punter, Daniel Whalen. He's going to get my good because I don't think I'm going to be able to give it to this guy every single week throughout the NFL season. And when Jordan Love is injured, you got to give some love to your punters. He had 3 punts in the game, and all 3 of them landed within the 20-yard line. The first punt at 16-yard line, the second punt at the 8-yard line, and the third punt at the 5-yard line. And that 5-yard line punt was late in the fourth quarter. It really backed the Colts up. And it really makes it hard, not only when you can't get into a flow, as the offensive could not do for the Colts, but when you're also starting deep in your own field. So I'm going to give a shout out to Dan Whalen. There's a lot of good across the board, though. It seems like the Packers were doing a lot right on Sunday, but they did have some bad. What would you say is your bad from Sunday?
There's a couple of things that come to mind. Not finishing in the red zone, coming up with field goals instead of touchdowns, which that's not as big of a deal this week with a, backup quarterback who's only been there 3 weeks, probably a very narrowed playbook because of that. So that's understandable, but also kind of the defense, and the offense, I guess, letting them kind of get back into it at the end and not finishing the game, not, putting the nail in the coffin, or what's the Packers announcer's famous line? There's your dagger. There wasn't a dagger play, and they control the game so well like that. They got to put a nail in the coffin. They got to finish it off and put the game away, as soon as possible, preferably. But for the Colts to have a chance at the end to come back and tie it or potentially win the game was nerve-wracking for me. And I had a lot of people reach out to me and say, hey, wow, that was a tight one. That was close, which we kind of knew it might be. But the way they controlled the game to start, you really would have liked to see them continue that and finish off the game strong, which they weren't as strong at the end. So,
yeah, to your point, we knew that it was going to be a close game. The Colts entered that game as 2.5, 3-point favorites. That line kind of moved a little bit throughout the week. We did think it would be close, but it almost seemed like it was closer than it had to be. And again, let's not beat a dead horse on this one. But it was a little bit, when it comes down to a Hail Mary on the final play of the game, that's a little bit too close for comfort on a team that ran for 261 rushing yards. So come on, that it shouldn't have been that close. My bad on the running side of things, and this might be your ugly. We might have just flip-flopped our bad and ugly because we might have different perspectives on this. But my bad was, again, the Packers' defensive rushing. So if a good is that the Packers could run the ball, the bad for me was that the Packers could still not quite figure out how to stop the rush. On this one, they gave up 140 yards on 18 carries. They gave up 7.8 yards a carry. Jonathan Taylor had an okay game. He had a couple just getaways. So Jonathan Taylor himself finishes with 12 carries, 103 yards, averaging 8.6 yards a carry. Anthony Richardson, 4 carries for 37 yards on 9 yards a carry. Again, they gave up 140 yards rushing. They didn't do a great job of it against the Philadelphia Eagles in week 1. They haven't done a great job of it over the last couple of years, but they did enough. They did enough to stop that offense from scoring a touchdown until late in the fourth quarter. They were able to get them off the field, but it's definitely we're seeing turnovers, we're seeing takeaways, but I'm still not liking what our rush defense is doing or the lack of their performance, to say the least.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. They didn't play well. What?
Nothing. Sphincter says what?
I don't know what just happened.
No, nothing's happening.
Well, no, I was started talking and all of a sudden you went.
All right. What were you going to say? Go ahead. Tell me what you're going to say.
I was going to reiterate what you just said. I agree. The defense did not stop the run as well as we would have liked to see, but the turnovers are great. And that some of the turnovers came in very key situations. And another thing to point out is what I mentioned last week with Malik Willis, Matt LaFleur telling him to go through his progressions, but then if it's not there, tuck it and run. And I definitely saw that. I saw him not take chances. I saw him take care of the ball. And he definitely has a huge rushing ability. I was watching some highlights before we hopped on here. And when he was running the ball, he looked like a running back running the ball. So that's a definite benefit that he has as opposed to some other backup quarterbacks we could have. So seeing that game plan basically exactly the way we foresaw it kind of unfold, that was good to see. It's always nice to, you have an idea of what you think the Packers should do. Maybe it's not always right, but it kind of unfolded exactly the way we kind of thought it would, and it turned into a win. So,
Well, and for Malik Willis to go 12 for 14,
mhm.
122 yards, a touchdown, no interceptions. He did everything that he needed to do. It wasn't too much. It wasn't too little. Like, he didn't lose the game from. He managed it correctly. He stayed within, what he was comfortable doing. And in instances where a center throws up on the football, instead of throwing it on third down, he just decides to run it. And that's not making the mistake. And we saw it too at the end of the first quarter or first half, right? Packers got the ball back with a little bit of time left on the clock, a little bit under 2 minutes to go. I think many of us Packer fans were like, oh, it's plenty of time to get another drive together. But we didn't want to push the boundaries too much. We were up 10-0 at that point. Matt LaFleur said, that's smart play calling. You're not risking it. And you'd have to agree with it. I mean, it worked out. The Packers won the game, but he did everything I think that Matt asked him to do, what the team needed him to do. And he was a big, big proponent to them being able to go out there and secure the victory. Do you have an ugly?
The only ugly that I can think of was the Josh Jacobs fumble right at the goal line. He was basically walking into the end zone and got it stripped away. That touchdown would have, as we talked about before, that touchdown probably would have put the nail in the coffin, would have been the dagger play, and it got stripped away right there at the goal line. So that was my ugly. You got to protect the ball. And watching the replay on that, I mean, he was coming through the line and he had the ball way out here right before the guy came in to tackle him. He was starting to cover it up, but I mean, you're running between the tackles like that. You can't be winging the ball out here. You got to be covering it up. So that was definitely on Josh Jacobs. So that was my ugly, as well as Josh Jacobs played. That was my ugly for this week.
And again, I'll preface that there weren't a ton of ugly moments from Sunday. It was just kind of a, go out there, play hard, and hang on for dear life and come away with a victory sort of a game. I have that as well. Jacobs fumbles on the 1-yard line. There's 12 minutes and 12 seconds to go in the second quarter. Packers would have gone up 17-0. That would have been their third straight scoring possession. My second, though, as far as the ugly, because my ugly is not being able to put the game away. My second was that missed field goal late in the fourth quarter. Now, just because Narveson is new and we like him and we want things to work out well for him, I think mainly because we just really want a kicker that we can rely on. Him missing that field goal with 4 minutes to go in the game was just another instance of just what we're letting the Colts hang on a little bit more than they should be. Had he made that field goal, the Packers would have gone up by 16 points. That would have been two touchdowns, two two-point conversions, and that's worst case, it's overtime. We allowed the Colts to score afterwards, and it just became, keep them out of the end zone to win the game. So, like I said, these are nitpicking uglies. That for the most part, I think the Packers performed well. I think Narveson performed well. I'm not giving up all hope on him. I think going 3 for 4 on field goals and 2 for 2 on extra points, or 1 for 2, or no, they only scored 1 touchdown. So what? 1 for 1 on extra points, right?
1.
Yep. I think he had a solid outing, and I'm not throwing the hat in on him by any means, but let's talk about our 2 free agent signings. I want to touch about this real quick because we're seeing, to start off this year, Xavier McKinney has made an impact on this defense, and Josh Jacobs, maybe we don't have to talk about him anymore, but he's made an impact. We went out. Packers historically don't go out and make a ton of free agent signings. So when they go out and get McKinney and he has 2 interceptions, that's a needle moving in the right directions for this Packers defense. They've had 5 interceptions in the first 2 weeks. Last season, they finished with a total of 7 for the 2023 season. So we're already on pace to destroy what the Packers did last year on defense.
Week 1 against the Eagles, the pick that he had coming across the field kind of out of nowhere. There's no reason why Jalen Hurts would have seen him because he came flying from across the field. The ball just was floated enough for him to get over there and take it away. So that was a fun interception to watch. And honestly, I think I missed the interception. I don't know what I was doing during this week's game. I think I missed it live. So I didn't
Were you watching on your phone again?
See that one. No. So, it was my birthday on Friday.
Oh, happy
So
belated birthday.
yeah, thank you, thank you.
Oh,
But so it was my birthday on Friday. So Sunday came around, my wife made sure that we didn't have anything else going on. We were gonna be, or at least I was gonna be, sitting in front of the TV with a beer watching the Packer game. So
yep.
we had football on the TV all day on Sunday through the Packer game, kept it on afterwards. So got to watch lots of football this weekend. But back to the interception. I don't know what I was doing, whether I was going to the bathroom or grabbing another beer or what, but I think I missed the interception. So I didn't see this week's. But yeah, obviously he's a playmaker, and plays like that change the course of a game. Winning the turnover battle typically wins a team the game. So him
Yep.
creating those has been a difference maker, I think.
And to put a pin on Josh Jacobs, so 2 games this season, 235 rushing yards. He had a little bit of slow start in the first half against the Eagles last week, but has since just again been a difference maker. And what he did, I do want to say this, what he did against the Colts, I don't think you get that kind of a performance out of Aaron Jones. And this isn't so much a disrespect to Aaron Jones, because I love Aaron Jones. I think he's had a pretty decent start out in Minnesota on those Vikings who have gone 2-0. We'll talk about that in overtime. But Jacobs has experience being the guy on a team that doesn't have a star quarterback, or a team that has a quarterback that is struggling. He's been able to perform and know what to do in those situations to try and propel the team forward. We probably didn't talk about this as much as we should have last week, which is perfectly fine. And it'll be interesting to see how it shakes out in week 3 against the Tennessee Titans. But there were some runs in particular where he had a complete stop, got all sorts of shifty, and turned it around the outside, and found either a way to pick up a couple yards, or in some instances picked up 20, 30 yards. So it's a type of performance where they literally put the ball in his hands. He put the team on his back. And I just don't know if we necessarily get that performance out of Aaron Jones. We won't ever know. This is all hypotheticals, but definitely, I think, a precursor to what we're going to see with this Packers team moving forward. And having a healthy Jordan Love is going to be one hell of a difference for this team on a two-headed monster in that backfield.
I agree, and I think we see more Josh Jacobs this week 3. Let's get into week 3.
Is that your segue? So week 3, let's take a look at where the Titans are heading in this game. So they're 0-2 to start the season. They lost Chicago in week 1. That's a 17-24 loss, and they were up 17-0 at halftime. And then they lost to the New York Jets, Aaron Rodgers and the New York Jets, just this past week, 17-24. That game was tied with 17-7 with about a little over 4 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. Both of these were close games. This could easily be, I'd like to believe this is probably more of a 1-1 Tennessee Titans team, because I do think that they had that game against Chicago essentially in the palm of their hands and they let it slip away. Up and down year for Will Levis. Where is your concern level? We're riding high off of a Indianapolis Colts victory. Do you have concerns overall with this next matchup? Do you feel like it's going to be more of the same? I really don't know what to make of this Tennessee Titans team. That's a really hard tongue twister for me right now. I don't really know what to make of this game, to be completely honest with you, because I don't know really if we've seen the best of the Titans yet this season.
No, I mean, talking about the loss they had to the Bears, like you said, they kind of gave it away. And the Bears offense definitely didn't beat the Titans. It was the Titans kind of beat themselves, giving the ball away, and the Bears were able to capitalize on defense and special teams. So, and then this week against the Jets, another really errant throw from Will Levis, just kind of giving it away to one of the Jets defenders. So yeah, there's been some struggles for this Titans team. And looking at their stats, Will Levis has poor passer rating, not throwing for very many yards, especially with some big names. I mean, they got Calvin Ridley, they got DeAndre Hopkins, Tony Pollard in the backfield, and they really can't get their passing game going. The run game has been not terrible, but yeah, they have an issue at quarterback. If this week it's more of the same from Will Levis, I wouldn't be surprised if we were to see him get benched during the game or after this game against the Packers if he continues to perform the way he has. What my concern is the Titans defense. Titans defense, although they've lost their first 2 games, the defense has played well. I was looking at defensive rankings. Titans have allowed the fewest yards of any team in the league this year. That's passing and rushing yards. Their pass defense is better than their run defense, yet they haven't recorded any interceptions. So they're stopping teams from being able to throw the ball, but they're not turning it into turnovers. So hard to know, what we're going to get with that. I think the Packers need to, their game plan this last week, run the ball, play solid defense. That's going to be similar. It's going to be a similar game plan this week, but I think the Packers are going to have to change it up because Titans are going to be looking at game film from the Colts game and probably loading the box against Josh Jacobs. Packers are going to have to open things up a little bit, I think. So,
well, one statistic that I fell short on last week when looking at that Colts game was that the Colts were the worst rush defense in the league last year. And we probably should have saw the writing on the wall for sure that the Packers could have an entire game plan built around Jacobs and have the results that they ended up having. With this Titans team, again, tough read overall. You kind of have to look backwards to look forwards with this team because we're 2 weeks in. Yes, they've done a good job. I mean, the stats tell half the story. They played Caleb Williams in his first week. He had 84 yards passing. That offense was not clicking whatsoever in week 1. So that total yard statistic can be a little bit of a tricky thing. But last year, they gave up 3.8 yards a carry in 2023. They have 4 yards a carry for the run defense so far in 2024. It's one of the better rush stopping defenses in the league. So exactly to your point, I think the Packers are going to have to rely a little bit more on Malik Willis in order to have some success this upcoming week. But yeah, it's going to boil down to not only finding some success for the Packers on the offense, but also you talk about the bad mistakes from Will Levis. Week 1 against Chicago, they have a lead. I think they were up by like 14 at that point, and Levis just tosses it to the Bears defense and he runs it back for a pick 6. Last week, I can't show the clips because of copyright reasons, but go look up the highlights from last week. They're on the 10-yard line. Titans are up 7-0. They're on a drive to score another touchdown. He does this stupid, weird little lateral thing that makes no sense whatsoever. Enough for his coach you can read his lips. What the fuck are you doing? And after the game got over and they ended up losing in his press conference, the coach is like, it was a dumb play. It was a dumb move. He's a grown ass man. I can say this shit and he won't take offense to it. It was absolutely wild what unfolded from that press conference. So it could easily be a game that Will Levis loses. And you're right. If it doesn't go in their favor, they're 0-3. Maybe Tennessee goes back to the drawing board. They don't have Malik Willis as their backup quarterback anymore. So I don't even know who their backup quarterback is anymore. But
yeah, that's a storyline in itself, isn't it? I mean,
that is a storyline.
I don't know how many people tell me that they think the NFL is scripted. This Malik Willis situation kind of feels a little scripted, doesn't it? Gets traded to the Packers. All of a sudden, he's the starter. They play him in week 3. He comes back to Tennessee. Will Levis is struggling. Titans fans are like, why'd we trade him away? Because he's playing so well. Like, it's hard to make that up, right?
Before we get too far ahead to like key matchups and whatnot, as far as looking forward to this game, the Tennessee has rushed for 270 yards through 2 weeks as well. So as I said, my ugly the last 2 weeks has kind of been this rush defense. They're averaging 135 yards the last 2 games. Primarily Tony Pollard, who came from Dallas, is the horse. Is that the bull horse? The bull? Bell cow? Bell cow.
Bell cow. There you go. I really had no idea where you were going with it. I was like, what is he trying to say?
So Pollard's had 144 yards rushing this season, and Will Levis has actually had 74 yards rushing so far through the first 2 weeks. So we have another quarterback that has the potential to get out of the pocket and rush for some yards. We have, I would say, a better than most running back that we're going to have to face in Tony Pollard. So not only are we going to have to run the ball, we're going to have to stop the run. This is football. I think that's probably what we're at. The Packers are going to have to play football. You got to stop the run, stop the pass.
Yep.
We have to get out there.
Well, and honestly, this last week against the Colts, this week coming up, it's old school football. Run the ball, play solid defense. The NFL has turned into such a high-powered offense, throwing the ball all over the place, all these trick plays, and this last week against the Colts, it was kind of nice to see a little bit of that old school football
Yep.
actually turn into a win. So, hopefully
And
that continues to work.
and to your point, I took a screenshot of this thing I saw on Facebook. In 22, there were 105 passing touchdowns through the first 2 weeks. Last year, it dropped to 86, and before last night's game, it was at 66. So it was 40 less passing touchdowns through the first 2 weeks, just in a 2-year span. So it's kind of just been a weird start to the NFL season in general, where you're
Yeah.
maybe relying on different methods to find points. Let's talk about injuries real quick before we get to X factors and key matchups. As I alluded to in the intro, because I'm going to tease, I'm going to make everybody wait for Jordan Love. As I started in the intro, Marshawn Lloyd, who actually had an okay game. He rushed for 15 yards on 6 carries. He showed some explosiveness in week 2, left the game late in the fourth quarter with an ankle injury, and he was the third-round draft pick who was placed on injured reserve on Tuesday. A lot of rumors circulating about what this means. Is it season ending? Will he be back? Well, it's according to Wes Hodkiewicz, who is one of the beat writers for Packers.com. NFL teams get a total of 8 players that they can place on injured reserve throughout the season. And there really isn't a whole lot of rules to it, except they can't come back for at least 4 weeks. So whether they decide to extend that for the rest of the year, they take it week by week after 4 weeks is up. The moral of the story is he's going to be out for a while. He's going to be out for a month. And it's going to be unfortunate because there were times throughout that game where it seemed like we had this 3-headed monster in the backfield between Jacobs, Lloyd, and Wilson. It seemed like any one of those guys can come in and they have their own little attributes. But definitely disappointing to lose him. And once again, Christian, we are going to have to wait longer to figure out what kind of a running back he is.
It was like you said, he showed flashes. It was
Yeah.
exciting to see because we really hadn't gotten to see him, and then for him to I remember the play that he got injured. I remember when he lipped off the field. I was like, "Oh, that's great." And then I saw the news. Was the news came out today, right? That they were placing him on IR. I was like, "Well, oh, there goes." I mean, and it's tough for him to come back, even if he sits out 4 games, the minimum amount for IR, and then comes back. We're already kind of partway through the season. Wilson's probably going to establish himself as the backup to Jacobs. It's going to be tough for Lloyd to come back this year and make a statement, I feel like. So we may not get to really see we may not see a lot of him until next season. Who knows?
Yeah, it's tough to say because I mean, if the talent is there, which I think both you and I see that there is talent there. If he comes back, he's healthy, he's cleared to play, he'll get his snaps. But I
Mhm.
agree, it's a setback for sure. If anything, maybe he has some really fresh legs later on in the season, and we can start to give some rest to Jacobs, who fucking just ran his ass off on Sunday. On the other side of the injury report, let's talk about Jordan Love. There are conflicting reports all over the place on what's going on with him. So I think it was Sunday morning before kickoff. He was ruled out, yes, but Ian Rappaport from NFL Network said Packers are eyeing a Week 5 return. Didn't really sit well in my stomach when that news came out because I didn't really believe it. And then, according to ESPN's Rob Demovsky, I believe this came out on Monday. Love was actually really close to playing versus the Colts, and it wasn't just some sort of a smokescreen or a charade. So conflicting
Well,
reports on what we're getting with Love. Matt LaFleur at his press conference on Monday was obviously asked about him, and Matt deliberately did not talk to the athletic staff or the training staff, medical staff. He did not want to get an update. Packers went into that Colts game truly believing, I think, that there was a shot that Love could play. And regardless of whether he was going to be in there or not, that game plan didn't change. It was going to be a run heavy look. I'm not sure if he's going to be playing on Sunday, but it seems like this could be, if anything, I'm feeling more confident than ever that this will be the last game that Love is going to be out. I think he's back for that Minnesota Viking game for almost certainly at this point,
yeah,
which is good.
yeah, I really hope so too. And like you said, everything's kind of pointing to the prognosis. Is that the right term?
Sure. I don't know.
Prognosis
What are you
looks
trying to say?
the as far as the injury itself, it seems like it's looking good. I mean, he was on the sideline. Do you feel like he wore shorts deliberately to show that he wasn't wearing a
That he has
brace? He
sexy
wasn't
legs.
like
Yes.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, that's why.
Well,
But yeah,
I
it
didn't
was good
actually
to
think twice about it, to be honest with you, about him wearing shorts. But
well, so
now that you say it, it makes a good point that
I
he's
thought it was interesting that he chose to wear shorts and he had a sleeve on that knee, but it was just a sleeve. It wasn't a brace. It wasn't, I mean, obviously he didn't have crutches or anything like that. I didn't really see any shots of him walking the sideline. I just saw some close ups of him on the sideline. So I would have liked to see, how he was moving along the sideline, hopefully without any sort of limp or anything like that. But I thought it said a lot that he was in shorts, in just a sleeve. He was on the sideline. Like you said, Domofsky came out and said that he was actually pretty close to playing week 2. So yeah, I would hope that this is the last week that we're without our franchise quarterback.
Yeah, and if the Minnesota Vikings keep on rolling, it almost seems. Now, Matt did say in his press conference that the victory on Sunday against the Colts is not going to influence whether or not Love comes back sooner or later. And I guess I believe him to a certain extent, but I don't know. You're telling me if you start the season 0-3 that you're not going to maybe put a 90% healthy Jordan Love in there. I don't know. I'm not completely buying it, but the season can get away from you real quick. And thankfully we were able to secure a victory. So there's your injury updates. There isn't actually an official injury report that goes out on Tuesday. So I don't really know. I think once Love gets healthy, hopefully we don't ever have to talk about injuries ever again in this podcast. But all those reports officially come out on Wednesday, and all the insight that we have. Moving over to X factors and key matchups. You want to knock this one out first, or you want me to take the swing?
You go for it. Let me hear what you got.
I'm gonna go for it then. So you already stole my thunder, and I don't know if you read my notes or not. Do you read my notes?
A little bit.
Just shook your head no, and then went.
No, I do.
So,
I do a little.
Okay, all right, no, it's fine. So you better have your own then for this one, or it could be the same. It doesn't matter. I agree with what you were saying previously. My thoughts, or yours, or both of our thoughts, that the game plan against the Tennessee Titans is not gonna work. I think that to points that we pointed or made so far in this podcast, that it's a much better run defense. They've kind of already showed their cards as far as what their game plan is, and can they put that out there for a second straight week and find success? I don't know if I'm completely convinced. So I have an X factor. I have a key player, and it's all going to lie on Malik Willis, and it has to be his revenge game. So we talked about how he got drafted by the Tennessee Titans in the 3rd round of the 22 draft. He spent that next season making a couple appearances behind Ryan Tannehill, who went out with injury, but never really got a full chance to go out there and prove himself. In the following draft, 2023, they go out there and get Will Levis and completely gave up and lost all hope on Malik Willis, decided to go an entirely different route. So Matt LaFleur had nothing but praise for Willis after the game. And I think there are intangible things in sports. There are obviously momentum swings, but there are these, I guess, beliefs and moments where a player can rise to an occasion. And I kind of see that could be the case, or it needs to be the case, at least on Sunday. Whether he can do it or not will remain to be seen. I'm still unsure with 5-10 minutes to go on this recording what I'm going to do for a score prediction, because I'm completely that torn. But if Malik Willis can have that revenge game, his passes on those 12 completions actually looked pretty decent. They were spirals. They were good throws. They'd get another week of him getting full practice with these receivers and learning the game plan and just kind of having that whole team behind him. If he can go out there, I mean, obviously quarterbacks need to perform. This is a quarterback-driven league, but if he can do enough, or I guess more, in that passing game where he finishes over 150 to 200 yards and pick up the first downs when needed, that's going to be, for me, the game winner, the deciding factor in this. It's probably his last chance. We're hoping it's his last chance to be the starter in Green Bay for the rest of the season. And he's got all the motivation. And to your point, NFL script has wrote it perfectly. It's time to go back to Tennessee, where the team that drafted him gave up on him, did not give him the full resources, found his replacement only after a year of being drafted and moved on from him, trade him away for a 7th round pick. Are you kidding me? Oh, the disrespect. So
A little
that
bit
team
of a
believes
chip
in
on the
him.
shoulder.
Yeah, Green Bay believes in him. The head coach believes in him. It's the first time in a long time that I think he feels that people believe in him. So I'm excited for him to go out there and throw the ball on Sunday. And I think he will have to throw the ball. And if he can, the Packers will come away with this victory.
So I agree with you. Malik Willis is an X factor in this week's game. I would choose him as the X factor or as the key player in this matchup as well. But honestly, I'm going to piggyback on that a little bit. You took an interesting X factor last week, and I'm gonna kind of copy you from last week. Matt LaFleur has got to come up with another game plan that plays to Malik Willis's strengths and puts him in a good situation. I mean, we both agree that the game plan can't be the same as week 2 against the Colts. It's got to be different because the Titans have seen that. They're going to watch the game film from the Colts game. They're going to load the box against Josh Jacobs because they saw how many yards he ran for in the first half. So Matt LaFleur is going to have to come up with something a little bit different. I think the run game is going to be key again. Josh Jacobs is going to have to be able to run the ball well. The offensive line is going to have to get some push, but it's going to have to be a little bit more than that. So I'm kind of going to be looking for some wrinkles from Matt LaFleur, maybe some trick plays, some misdirection stuff, which we see a decent amount of that from LaFleur on a regular basis. But I feel like there's going to have to be even more of that this week. This Titans defense is decent. They've got the game plan from last week that they can watch. So he's going to have to throw some wrinkles in there. So Matt LaFleur again this week, I think is a key factor in a victory.
Yeah, and last week's game was 100% Matt LaFleur game plan. I mean, obviously Jacobs went out there and executed, but a lot of it came to the motions and being able to commit to it. They didn't have to worry about deviating from that game plan because it all just kind of worked. They were able to get positive yards on first and second down and make it third and manageable pretty consistently throughout that game. So they didn't have to deviate from it. They were able to come with a lead. And yeah, I think Matt LaFleur got his roses last week for the great game plan that was. Yeah, it's a mixture of both. If Love's going to be out, you're going to have to find ways to get creative and move the ball. It's going to be both of them, quarterback and head coach. Pretty easy recipe for success. I'm going to give you score predictions first because now with
because you haven't decided, isn't it?
I have not decided. I really don't know which way to go in this game. I don't.
Oh, I'm going to go. This is just because I didn't write this down. I didn't really think of score prediction ahead of time. So this is just off the cuff. I'm going to go Packers 20, Titans 13.
I'm so glad you said that.
I know. You're welcome.
Yeah.
Why are you so glad I said that?
Well, because I'm not certain what's going to happen in this game. Tennessee has put up 17 points in both week 1 and week 2. So I'm going to give them 17. So now the question boils down, will the Packers be able to score more than 17 or less than 17, right? We saw them finish with 19 last week. That was with a missed opportunity at a touchdown with Josh Jacobs. I don't pick the Packers to lose very often, but I'm going to say that they will lose this game. I know I have to do it. I can't pick them every single week. It doesn't even feel good. It hurts so much to say it. I don't know. I don't even know if I want to commit to that. I don't want to commit to that. 20-17 Packers. Let's fucking go. Let's fucking go. I can't do it.
Oh my God.
I can't do it. I can't bet against them. I can't do it. I will make my Jello shots. I will cheer aggressively. And if they lose, I'll be less disappointed than normally. But let's see what happens. We're facing an 0-2 Titans team. Come on. Revenge game.
Yeah. Okay. So here's... I can definitely see like the whole scripted aspect of it, that Malik Willis coming in, got traded away. He got replaced by Will Levis early on in his career, comes in, lights it up. I can see, honestly, I think Malik Willis runs the ball a lot. I mean, he looked really good rushing the ball last week.
You did.
I think he does a lot more of that this week as well. I mean, if I were to guess, I mean, I think he comes out of that game with over 50 rushing yards, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, last week he finished with 41 on 6 carries, so
Yeah.
yeah, I wouldn't
Yeah,
rule it out.
I think he runs the ball a lot. I think LaFleur opens up the playbook a little bit because he's got, another week under his belt practicing as the starter, learning the playbook. So I think it opens up a little bit. So I don't know. I can definitely see Willis coming in there and got a chip on his shoulder, making a statement saying, "Hey, you shouldn't have traded me away. Shouldn't replace me with this other guy so quickly."
Yep.
So
And again, he looked good. His
yeah,
passes were spirally. He had spirally looking passes. I mean,
spiral.
what else can you ask for?
Spirally.
So
Very spirally.
on that note, we both have the Packers with 20 points. I have the Titans scoring 17. You got them scoring 13. Another defensive performance out of you and your mindset. Let's kick it
Hey,
over to overtime. What?
I want part of that 20 points to be a defensive touchdown.
Yeah, you said that last week. You had your scoop and score.
Yeah, I did. And it didn't happen. So they owe me one. They owe
They
me
do owe
one.
you. Yeah.
So
Okay.
pick 6 this week. I'm calling it.
All right. Kick it over to overtime. Until next time, everyone, we will see you on the internet. Thanks for watching.